Hey everyone, this is Dr. Drizzle and welcome to the National Parks Expedition Challenge. Today, we are in Omaha, Nebraska at the Lewis and Clark National Historic Trail at their headquarters, and we're here today with Ranger Tom. Ranger Tom, thank you for allowing us to be here, and we're standing beside what river?
Thanks for coming. You picked a great time to be here. It's an early fall day and early October, and you're standing on the banks of the Big Muddy, or the Missouri River.
Nice. Well, Tom, we know that you've had a couple of experiences with the national parks before you got here, so can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I started seasonally with the National Park Service 17 years ago, and I was a long-time seasonal interpretive ranger at Little Bighorn Battlefield, and I became a permanent park ranger with Bighorn Canyon National Recreation Area. Went on to be a supervisory park ranger at San Antonio Missions National Historical Park, and finally here as education specialist of Lewis and Clark National Historic Trail.
Well, we're glad to be here today, and we're excited to learn a little bit more about this place, but also to connect it to our knowledge of Lewis and Clark Expedition. So tell us about this place, how it became to be a national site, and some of the historical significance.
Yeah, so where you're standing today on the banks of the Missouri is the traditional homelands of the Omaha and the Ponca tribes. Today it's also home to the Winnebago people. And Omaha is home to nearly 1 million people from all walks of life from all over the world. And this Missouri River is a critical part of many ecosystems from Montana all the way down to where it feeds into the Mississippi River in Missouri and then goes all the way down into the Gulf of Mexico. It's an important river. You're seeing runoff from probably 20 different states coming all the way from the Rocky Mountains down. And this river has been an important place for people to live for over 10,000 years. And for our story for the Lewis and Clark National Historic Trail, Meriwether Lewis and William Clark and their expedition will come up this river in 1804, making their way exploring what's unknown to European Americans or Anglo-Americans at that time, going through the native homelands of probably more than 60 tribes at that time. And they're looking for a few different things. Thomas Jefferson has commissioned them to find a water route to the Pacific, which would be good for trade and transport. Thomas Jefferson has commissioned them to document the tribes they encounter along the way, to establish good relationships with them as they see it, and also to document any new natural plants and animals as they map this area.
So tell us a little bit about the people involved in this, because we talked earlier off camera about how this was a very diverse group of people that went out looking for new things.
Yeah, so the Lewis and Clark story is compelling as Americans. For some people, this is a story of accomplishment, overcoming adversity. And for some, this moment represents a watershed moment that is the beginning of the end of a way of life that they've known for thousands of years. And one of the reasons I think so many people are drawn to the story, not just in the United States, but all over the world, is the fact that the expedition is comprised of many of the Americans we know today. So you have Sacagawea, a native woman, you have York, an enslaved black man, you have Canadians, you have Americans, you have people from all over the world. You even have a kid with John Baptiste that's here, and the collaboration of the many tribes along the way. So you have, in some ways, a fairly inclusive story of beginnings and ends for many different Americans.
Would we call this expedition successful?
That's an interesting question. Honestly, I think if you were to ask the expedition when they arrived back in St. Louis in 1806, the fact that all but one of them made it back alive, I think they would call that successful, because they're going into perilous territories across the Rocky Mountains and many other different rugged landscapes, rugged climates, and still making it, thanks to the help of many of the guides and interpreters and the hosting tribes along the way, they're able to make it a pretty successful journey.
When I tell kids that we were at Lewis and Clark National Historic Trail, that's kind of not being very truthful because we're not in the entirety of the trail. So we're here at the headquarters in Omaha, but this place is huge, right? So
That's right.
what does it encompass?
Yeah, so the Lewis and Clark Trail is 4,900 miles. It begins in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and extends down the Ohio River, converging with the Mississippi and the Missouri, and going all the way to the Pacific coast in modern-day Oregon. And then the journey back, which adds a lot of miles as well. So you have a massive commemorative trail, 4,900 miles of stories and opportunities to experience things today.
So when did the National Park Service get involved with this?
So the Lewis and Clark National Historic Trail was established by Congress and signed by the President in 1978. And since then, we have worked with partners all along the trail. We don't directly own or manage any of this trail, but we work in close partnership and collaboration with lots of different organizations. They could be sometimes just county parks and museums, sometimes state parks, sometimes other national parks or national forests. And we work with them to protect that area for visitors to see today, and also working with them on ways they can commemorate this moment of history and share it with the American public.
So I know you talked about it started in Pittsburgh. Can you tell me a few of the spots along the trail that we can share with our students? Now, it's not calling out your favorites, but just sharing a few.
Sure. I think a couple of the ones that people find most interesting, as far as where I get really excited about this story, it's not along this stretch of the Missouri River, because when Lewis and Clark and the expedition come up this Missouri River in this area in 1804, they know what is ahead of them. It has been mapped. There are traders that have been coming and going. The indigenous peoples of this area, the Omaha, the Ponca, they have seen Anglo-Americans before. And it's not until they get, once they get to the winter of 1804, they spend it in Fort Mandan in modern-day North Dakota, next to the Hidatsa and Mandans of that area, and even some Arikara. And in that area of earth lodges, at the time they're there are more people in that community of Fort Mandan than in the entire city of Washington, D.C. at that same moment. And I imagine, for me, if I was on this expedition, I imagine that being a moment where you step back and realize that you're not going into any land that has never been tread by man or woman before. You're going to lands that have been inhabited by people and civilizations for 10,000 years or more. And I would imagine that's an interesting moment. And then from there on, it becomes pretty treacherous as far as they're concerned, because from then on, they're relying heavily on guides and other tribes in the area that will help them navigate where they're supposed to go. They can very easily get lost, very easily have difficult time deciding at a fork in the road, do I go left or right? Traversing waterfalls, traversing mountains of very steep magnitudes. And finally, the next winter, they will be on the Pacific coast at what they called Fort Clatsop, named after the Clatsop Nehalem people living in that area at that moment. And they'll spend the winter on the beach, resupplying, making salt, getting their gear ready for yet another journey. The spring of 1806, they turn around and they'll make their way back, finally getting back to St. Louis in the fall of 1806.
Did they take the same trail back? It would make sense, but I wonder.
On the way out, they take many trails. They get lost a lot. They go one way, they have to come back and backtrack and find another route. And so they're really trying to figure it out as they go. But on the way back, they have a pretty good sense of the best way to, particularly the mountains of the Rocky Mountains are what was pretty complex to traverse and find the right route. Getting back over the Continental Divide will be much easier the second time after they've had a lot of trial and error on the first time.
So I know that Thomas Jefferson also asked them to write down everything, to draw it out, to help others see what was out there, because there were no cameras.
Right.
Their eyes were their cameras, right? So I think that leads us into our challenge for our kids today, because I think we're going to take a little bit of advice from Lewis and Clark and the others in the expedition to create something. So, as you know, we use the UN sustainability goals to frame our thinking. We're going to talk about goal number 9, which is industry, innovation, and infrastructure, and then integrate that with goal 11, which is sustainable cities and communities. And I'm actually going to let Ranger Tom issue the challenge.
think it would be really exciting to create your own National Historic Trail of your life. So from your life from birth to now, maybe even before birth, maybe some of the National Historic Trail of your parents' story.
Oh.
But what brought you to be who you are and where you are today, and creating a National Historic Trail of your own that follows that path? What are some of the mountains and hurdles you've had to overcome in life that you could put on that map? What are some of the waterfalls? What are some of the campsites that you've stayed at for a while? These could be literal places you've been, or they could be figurative places. Where did you meet your best friend? Where's a fun place you've spent time with your family? Where's a place that you really loved and you want to go back and visit someday? That's your National Historic Trail. Draw that out. Think about your life on a map, and then go back and look and see which indigenous tribes historically or today have lived in the area of your National Historic Trail.
So we want to make sure that we see all of this amazing work. So we want you to tag the Nat Park Challenge, where you can tag us at Dacia92, and don't forget to tag the Lewis and Clark National Historic Trail, because they want to see what amazing places you've been to in your life, and you never know, maybe one day your National Historic Trail could be part of the National Park Service. Ranger Tom, I think this was a great challenge today. I think it celebrates who we are as humans, but it also elevates and commemorates this place, taking Lewis and Clark as the example, but all the people that also helped Lewis and Clark, and we'll see what they come up with.
I can't wait to see. I'm excited for some examples, yeah.
There's kids out there that would love to work in the national park someday, but they sometimes feel like they don't have those skills yet. Can you look in that middle camera and give them any advice on what they can be doing now to prepare for a job or a career in the National Park Service?
Absolutely. The number one personal and career advice I have for anybody of any age is to stay curious. That's the most important thing you can do at any age. Be humble and curious and always wanting to learn more. And when you do that, you're going to be a great candidate for any national parks jobs. We have a lot of different career paths. You could be a naturalist and working with plants and animals. You could be a law enforcement ranger. You could work with fires. You could be an administrator. You could be an accountant. You could be any number of things. A career path you may be interested in, I guarantee you we have opportunities in the National Park Service. Be looking, especially if you're young and early in your career, we have a lot of seasonal park ranger opportunities always coming up on usajobs.gov. And we also are always looking for volunteers. We call our volunteers in parks our VIPs, and we mean it. Volunteering opportunities are abundant in our agency. There's lots of different ways to get to parks, to learn about places and have great experiences, and maybe even start to develop some skills that can be valuable towards a career down the road. So look us up.
And we know a lot of you participate in our Junior Ranger program. So if you're interested in art and drawing, you can be like Ranger Katie, who actually created the Junior Ranger book for the Lewis and Clark National Historic Trail. So there are a lot of opportunities out there, right?
That's right. And if you want to do that Junior Ranger program online, you can go to nps.gov/LECL and go to the For Kids section, and you can learn a lot more about the Lewis and Clark expedition and all of the people and stories along the way.
Well, thank you so much for having us here today.
Oh, thanks for coming.
So thanks so much for being here with us today. We're really excited to see what you create. So from Dr. Drizzle and Ranger Tom, we are out of here.